Shalom and welcome to 2 Minutes of Torah. This year's entitled Pei Vav Amud Bet. The Gemara talks about a kanas, a penalty that Ezra proclaimed against the Leviim, that they cannot receive Maasair during his time period. Why? So the Gemara writes, because they did not come back to Eretz Yisrael, they stayed in Chutz La'aretz, and therefore he penalized them. So the commentators try to make some sense of this. This is brought down in the halacha. The Rambam writes in Hilchot Maasair Perak Aleph Halacha Daled, writes Ezra Knesset Leviim Bismano, that he penalized them during his time, that they cannot go ahead. He says, Shelo Yitnu Lehen Maasair Rishon Ela Yidnatin LeKohanim Lefi Shelo Alu Uimol Yerushalayim. Since they did not return with him to Yerushalayim, he said not to give them the Maasair, just give it to the Kohanim instead. So the commentators try to make sense. What is the nature of this kanas? The Keseph Mishna over on the place of the commenting on the Rambam Perak Chadal and Hilchos Maasair writes that maybe it was only bismano, which is what the Rambam writes. He writes the word bismano. So maybe it was just during his generation. So the commentators trying to make sense of the takana and trying to make sense of how the Leviim, who subsequently did come up, how were they going to live? They didn't have land. They didn't have fields. They lived off the Maasair. So Keseph Mishna proposes that maybe it's during his generation when Leviim did not come up, then they would not receive. But future generations, of course, they would. The Radvaz writes about such a possibility, but adds on something else, that maybe the kanas was not a complete one, that Leviim cannot receive at all. Rather, that when the Kohen and the Levi come together, that's when the Ezra put the penalty out, that in that case we just give the Kohanim because Leviim really did not come up. But if a Levi comes for Maasair on his own, then there's no kanas against that. And the Rambam does write to this halacha when he discusses Kohanim and Leviim. So therefore the Radvaz says that maybe that's what it's referring to. It's a very limited kanas, a limited penalty. Be that as it may, it's machlokas Radvaz and the Keseph Mishna. Exactly, I don't understand our Gemara, but what's fascinating is, and a little depressing as well, is that Ezra needed to go ahead and penalize the people who did not return to the Second Commonwealth with him as the leader, which means that there's a proclamation from Koresh, from the head of the world, the Gentile head of the world. The Gentiles were financially helping them make Aliyah. Ezra the Gadol Hador went up. Yet all the factors there, plus the prophecy of 70 years. That Yirmiyahu said in 70 years they're going to return. And still the people did not hear it. Apparently there's just resistance for different reasons to come back home and to see the Geula. But sometimes that's just what happens. And the leaders here in this case had to make a kanas against those people that just didn't see the reality as they should have. Shalom.